Please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the Ed Up Experience, and we are back on another awesome and exciting episode of our Academic Integrity series. And with me, as always, is the host, the co-host, who is the most. He is Bradley Emmy. He is co-founder and CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Elvin. Looking forward to today's chat.
Oh, yes. So am I. He's actually a returner. He's been on the podcast before. And so without further ado, you know how we work, Bradley. We go jump right in. And he is Ryan Lufkin. He's the Vice President of Global Academic Strategy at Instructure, the makers of Canvas. Ryan, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, happy to have you back, and excited that we're going to focus on academic integrity. So we like to start off, always ask everyone, level set. Tell us about what you do and how do you do it, Ryan?
So I have been in education technology for about 25 years. I've been with Instructure for about 7 years now, a little over 7 years. And I've somehow fallen into my dream job, which is as the VP of Global Academic Strategy. My job really is to go out and speak about the trends impacting education across the globe. I get to travel around the world, which is amazing on my end, but it's also amazing because I get to collect all of these perspectives from schools in Australia and the Philippines and Chile and Peru and Colombia, right? And bring those back. And that helps shape, us as a company, how we're looking at the future of education and how we're supporting that with the technologies we build and buy.
That's awesome. I'm a little jealous, by the way, but
I get a lot of really good meals, especially I'm looking forward to Peru coming up here. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me all about that. It's going to be awesome. Okay, so here's a question we're asking everyone to start off of. And I'm very curious, based on your experience and your travels and all the conversations you have, how do you define academic integrity?
So I think the definition of academic integrity has fundamentally changed, and I'm gonna bring up an example from when I was a teacher. I had a student hand in a paper, and it was the first time I had seen a student cut and paste text and images from the web, and I was immediately like, "Well, that's cheating," and because in my mind, he didn't sit there with a National Geographic open, writing down what was written in the National Geographic. Even though he cited his sources and did everything that I would have done, he didn't have to go Xerox it and then cut the picture out, right? It was a change in the effort level that I found to be, my initial response was, that's cheating. And I think what we're seeing right now with AI, you're seeing a lot of the same things. And so the idea of misrepresenting your work, claiming provenance for something that you didn't actually create has been the traditional, definition for plagiarism, right? What we're seeing is, using ChatGPT. How is using ChatGPT to help your writing and doing those kinds of things different than using Adobe Illustrator to create an image, right? This is a tool that we can use. Now, there are different ways to use AI that make it not just give me the answer, let me take that answer, cut and paste it and put it in there. There's ways to use, Claude just came out with, or Anthropic came out with their Claude learning mode that is more about how to, instead of giving you the direct answer, asking you questions to the Socratic method to get there. But what I think we're fundamentally running into is the definition of academic integrity, of plagiarism. These definitions are changing, and we need to change our thinking around them so that we can actually measure students' mastery of knowledge and measure the right things, right?
Oh, that's so interesting. Like, I think you're the first person that's maybe answered this question in terms of like the difficulty of like how easy it is.
It's a fundamentally different thing, right? And the problem is we're all using AI, right? Most teachers that are upset about students using AI are themselves using AI.
We were just talking about AI note takers, right? Before
Yeah. I mean, this conversation is being transcribed in the notes. It'll even do takeaways from our conversation, right? Like, these tools are they're ubiquitous now. They're only going to be more so in the future. And so this idea that we're just going to ban AI tools or you look at them as cheating tools is fundamentally flawed. It's like looking at the internet. And when the internet came out too, because I'm old, there was a lot of headlines about how much the internet was reducing the productivity of the workplace. These were all over the place. And you're like, I used to have to get in the car and drive to the library to do research at my first job, right? I would have to take files, take them physically from one location to another. The idea that somehow the internet made us less productive, the internet made us massively more productive than we ever could have been. And AI is set to do the same thing. And so pretending that that's not part of this conversation, the real, I think the real struggle that people are kind of attaching themselves to is, how do we make sure that students aren't using AI to circumvent learning? How do we make sure the learning still happens? And there's lots of ways to do that, but that needs to be the heart of the conversation, not banning AI or not using AI. It's, how do we make sure that we use AI to ensure that that learning is still happening, that engagement between teacher and student is still happening?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with every technological movement, there's always going to be like your techno optimists, like your
Yep.
Luddites, like,
Yep.
your let's approach this cautiously. Like everybody always is, there's always kind of the same broad brush.
Going back to the calculator, honestly,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, and we see that, there's still, I was at a conference in January in Florida, an AI conference, and there was an educator who raised their hand and said, my job is to not to prepare students for jobs. My job is to prepare better members of society. And I was actually happy to hear the entire audience groan, right? Because that viewpoint, these are not mutually exclusive things any longer, right? A student does not pay for college simply for the pursuit of knowledge. It's just not a thing. We have to become employed members of society in order to live. And these pieces are intertwined. And if you don't think AI literacy weaves itself into that conversation, you're fundamentally wrong, right? If you're a member of society that can't discern deepfakes or, blatantly false AI generated imagery because you don't know what AI is capable of, you're not training. If you fail to train students on that, you're not making good members of society. They have to have AI literacy. So you mentioned that technology innovation, like that's got to be part of it. AI literacy has got to be part of it. And yes, those basic skills of communication and writing and empathy and hard skills like data analytics and whatever, those all have to be part of it. And the more we're able to push, especially educators, into that, we're like beyond that kind of entrenched Luddite thinking, the better off we are as a society.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess like, I mean, is that so like, I mean, let's kind of roll with this analogy between like, AI of 2025 versus
Yeah.
like maybe the internet, like, 25, 30 years ago, right?
Yep.
Like, did we end up like needing to teach kids like kind of internet literacy, or did they kind of just fall into it, do you think?
I mean, there was a lot of uh, time and money spent at the time. Remember where Wikipedia was a
Of
great
course. Oh yeah,
information, but you couldn't
everyone
use it
hated
as
Wikipedia.
yeah, and you couldn't use it as a source because it was not, even though it was actually far more timely than an encyclopedia that was printed 5 years ago. It was, these were up to date in the second. We had to get over that hump, right? We had to teach people how to use it properly and actually look at the right sources, look at the right, reliable websites. I don't know that we fully
We don't do that anymore, right? Like nowadays, like students just use it and like it's
don't
just
get it. No,
good,
no.
right? Like so we don't have Wikipedia literacy.
No, no. And the thing that I love, I just told this story yesterday, but um one of the great videos I saw, and it's probably 10 years old at this point, but it was a small child, not able to speak yet, and they handed her a magazine, and she went to swipe on it, and then looked at her finger and looked at it again, and then wiped her finger on her shirt and tried it again, right? But she was so digitally native that it was crazy to her that this magazine was broken. She looked at it as a tablet that was broken, right? That's how digitally native they are. But I think the fundamental difference with AI is it's so good at generating responses and generating that writing and doing some of the idea that you measured a student's mastery of a course or the material of the skills taught in the course through a 20-page paper is kind of asinine. Like it's kind of lazy. I mean, if we're being very honest, it was the simplest path with the lowest level of engagement to measure a student's mastery. We're better than that. As an education as a whole, we're better than that, and we're now being forced to be better than that, because if AI can give you the answers, if AI can game your assessment, then your assessment's probably not very good, right? You've
Do you
got
think, like, yeah, the assessment security kind of ties back into that difficulty thing where it's like, in order to successfully measure a student's progress, like the assessment has to be difficult?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
like,
and then you'll hear educators say, "Well, the struggle is important. The struggle is the piece." But I was at San Jose State University a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to a professor of product design, and it was really fascinating because he said, we used to spend most of our semester working on how do you articulate the design of a product, a water bottle, for instance. How do you articulate the design of that? And we would spend all of our time learning how to write that and document that. And then at the end, we would then go do proof of concept, maybe with a professor or whatever else. Now that first element of it takes a week. It takes a week of what used to be a full semester course. So now he said, now, okay, we can that rapidly document that the design. Now I'm going to make my students actually reach out to multiple industry specialists and validate their thinking and then come back and revise it. And so same course, fundamentally different amounts of time spent because of AI on these different elements and a shift towards the focus of that human interaction. How do I and this is hard for younger students. My kids, I have this problem. My nieces, I was talking to her about the other day about this. How do you pick up the phone and call someone that you don't know, that is an industry expert, that is an adult with all this experience? How do you reach out and how do you engage with them, right? So it really is a shift more to those human skills, these really important human skills. And I thought that was fascinating. This same course, same underlying pedagogy, same underlying architecture, with just a massive shift in where we spend our time.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that's kind of one of the things with like generative AI specifically, right? It's like, a lot of the focus in the skill development is going to go from generating novel content to discriminating, like,
Yeah,
is this factual or not? Like, is this correct
exactly.
or not? Is this going
Well,
to resonate with another human? Like,
yeah.
or
Well,
curation. Yeah.
and the other piece too is that critical thinking aspect of it. Like I got a document from someone the other day, and I was like, "Oh, it's a great summary of all these AI tools across education." I was like, "Oh, I recognize the first one, Maisie from University of Michigan. This is awesome." And then I started going through the rest of them, and I was like, "That's not real. Well, that one's not real." And they had populated the first line right with this example, and then AI had kind of made up the rest. And it was so funny because they were like, "Oh, it's a great document. Here, go use this. I think you'll find it really useful." I'm like, "You didn't use that for anything, did you?" Because that was all made up. That was all what we would call hallucinated. And it was because AI looks at the shortest path, the most efficient path to give you what you want. And in that cases, making it up seemed logical. And so, but we've got to be critical. We've got to be the experts, that human in the loop expert. And that's why, when people are like, "Oh, we're firing all these people and using AI," it's a really bad idea. We're not there yet. AI is not there yet. Let's make sure that we understand that the value is in the human expertise with AI as a tool to automate certain elements and make certain aspects easier.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I do think that like AI is going to get better at these things. Like AI is going to get better at like not hallucinating when you don't want it to, and
Yeah.
like AI is going to get
Oh,
better at citing
totally.
its sources, all of this stuff. But
Yep.
people are always going to use AI to try and deceive you. Like, and
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, like
And
this isn't going away.
no, and all you have to look at is like how good AI imaging, like image generation tools have gotten, right? Before they'd always have an extra finger, or like the animal would always have 3 legs instead of 4, and like there were tells, right? And now that's largely gone. And some of the video that's coming out is really impressive.
Yeah,
But that's
video is not far off. Yeah.
yeah, that's why we as a society have to like train people to understand that AI is capable of that and can do that. So when there's a video of a presidential candidate doing something inappropriate or saying something inappropriate, you can point to it and be like, "No, that's very possibly AI," right? And have that discernment. And we're going a little far afield of the academic integrity aspect of it, but it's all interwoven, right? We've got to teach that AI literacy, and you know that idea that certain educators are saying, "Well, we're going back to blue books, pencil and paper." That's not realistic. We don't live in that world, right? Like when you say we're going caveman on them, like that is you're taking a big step back, right? But we still hear that, unfortunately. And I think the divide between higher education and K-12 is pretty distinctive. My daughter, who's a
Oh,
sophomore
interesting.
at university, she's being given very clear boundaries, very clear interactions. My son, who just is graduating from 8th grade, his educators aren't addressing it. They're just saying, "Don't use AI." and they've blocked it on their Chromebooks. They've blocked, ChatGPT, and they know every other AI tool out there. They know how to hack their Chromebooks. Like they're still using AI, and it's almost like a don't ask, don't tell. And it's not. I think on a podcast a few months ago, I was quoted as saying, a wave of AI feral children is going to crash onto higher ed, and it's real. These kids are not being taught the rules. They're not being taught how to ethically use them, and largely, I think K-12 isn't picking up the responsibility for that they need to, especially with junior high and high school students. So,
Absolutely. And I mean, I think one part of this too that we need to address is like, I think when we talk to like a lot of educators in high school and K through 12 in particular, like a lot of it is just time management. Like a lot of them
yeah,
just have time
yeah.
to like kind of redo all of their assignments for a whole quarter. And it's just so much easier to just be like, okay, like we're just using the same assignments, but we're going blue book. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's
and
the
it's
5-minute solution and not the 5-hour solution.
100%. And they're not, I mean, we've got data that shows they're time poor. They're not being given the resources to go back and fundamentally redesign these pieces. They're not being given the resources and the training around AI. I had an educator say, I'm a good writer. I'm not going to use AI. I'm a good writer. And I'm like, well, then don't use it to write. Use it to summarize your emails. Use it to go, summarize information. Use it for helping organize your thoughts and prioritize tasks. Like there's so many use cases you're not even thinking of. Let's get back to thinking about like how can we use this productively, not it's just for writing, because these tools are far more valuable than that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think I do empathize with that student though, because it's like, if the student feels like they're a poor writer and they feel that all their classmates are using
Yeah.
AI to write, they're like, I'm gonna look like an idiot if I don't. Like, right?
Well, and a lot of the time, one of the things we've talked about a lot is, and this actually came from one of the first webinars I did in January of 2023, right after it came out. Um, and I had a professor from university actually say in the chat, my son is neurodivergent and he has a really hard time engaging with an assignment if he doesn't understand the why. What's the purpose of the assignment? And that was like a fundamental like switch flipped in my head. And that if students don't understand the why, they're far more likely to take the shortcut to getting the product done, because they don't understand that no, the process is gather these different sources, summarize them, form your opinion, cite your sources, right? Because that helps you form these thoughts in your head. They just go, you're going to make me write a 20-page paper? Oh, ChatGPT does that really easy, right? They've got to understand the why. We've got to get back to the fundamentals of teaching so that they're not taking the shortcut and they understand that they're doing themselves a disservice by taking that shortcut, right? Because one of the things that we as a technology vendor with Canvas hear a lot is, well, how are you blocking these tools?
Mm.
And that's one of the biggest challenges is if a student willfully gives their username and password to another student to take their course for them, what do you do about that? Right? That they've made that decision. If they do the same thing and they plug in an AI agent, same thing, right? They've willfully done that. If they've plugged in Google uh, app that is doing something, we can go to Google and have them take that down. We can even try to block that. But they're still pursuing the shortcut, right? In a way that frankly, we can't without a lockdown browser or proctoring tests and stuff can't really address. And then on top of that, there's a thing called I hate even promoting it, but Goth AI, GAUTH.ai, which has an app on your phone, and you can point that Goth app at your screen and take a picture, and it'll give you all the answers to whatever.
Oh, like photo math plus
Yeah,
plus. Oh god.
yeah. So it's one of those things where just blocking it on your screen or on your device isn't the answer, right? Like there's so many like ways to circumvent that. We've got to make it so AI just can't give the answers. Like you're engaging with students. You write a paper and then have students actually come in and defend it, right? Like you would find, and that's hard to do at scale, right? It's again, we talk about being time poor. That takes more time than most things do, but we've got to find ways to turn assessment on its head so that we can address these things, because fundamentally the like we said at the beginning, the definition of academic integrity is changing, the definition of plagiarism is changing. It is We've got to figure out, we've got to start using these tools as what they're designed for, being assistants that we're going to use throughout the rest of our lives, because AI is going to be ubiquitous. It's going to make everything in our lives easier behind the scenes, and we won't even know it's there. We're in the kind of trust building phase at this point. It'll disappear into the background in so many different ways, but we've got to make sure that we're still creating those experts that can oversee AI in the future. So when you get those confidently incorrect papers from, you're smart enough to look at it, be critical, and understand that that is not real, right? We've got to be the humans in the loop there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm come from like a research engineering background. So I'm always like thinking about like the technical solutions to these things. So
Yeah.
I guess in your opinion, like, do you think that technology is something that can assist educators in kind of redesigning their assessments and like make it less daunting of a process and save them time?
Honestly, if you actually go to any of the AI tools that are out there, and you actually say, "Hey, help me redesign my assessment. My quiz is being easily gamed by AI. What are some ways I can do it?" It'll help you. Like it is both the cause of. I mean, it is a whole Homer Simpson quote, about alcohol, cause of and solution to all of life's problems. In a lot of ways, AI is also the solution to the problems that it creates. It is so good at helping you think through new ways of outlining your course, organizing your content, doing assessment in different ways, right? And so making it your ally, making it your assistant is the way to solve the problem. And again, the you know Bradley, you talked about like educators are time poor. This
Yeah.
they don't. There's not enough time in the day, and like anything, like adopting like Canvas, right? You've got to spend that time on the front end to build out your course, but the time it saves you on the back end is demonstrable, right? You have so much time to do these other tasks if you're using SpeedGrader, or if you're using these different tools that save you that time. You can retest that time and actually engaging with students. AI is loved the same way. As you find these different ways to engage with students, you're actually, I think, going to find that the learning outcomes are better. You've got more time because you've spent the time to build these things on the front end. Educators we almost need that like AI adoption week at the beginning of the semester, or the beginning of the school year, to give them the time to really embrace these, and then bring in the advocates, bring in the instructional designers, and really help them engage with this stuff.
So I want to jump in, Ryan. I have a question for you. So you get to travel, you get to talk to amazing people, go to amazing places, have fantastic times, have amazing conversations. So I want to know, what are people asking you, because you're representing, Instructure, makers of Campus,
Yep.
asking you when you're having a conversation about academic integrity on their campuses. Obviously, you have strong feelings, and this episode has been fire. You're on fire. You got strong feelings, and I love that. But I'm just trying to figure out, what are the questions that you're hearing from customers and people who are through the academic integrity lens, like what's the problems out there and that they need help with?
A lot of it is, especially in countries where they're not as the educators themselves aren't as technologically advanced. They haven't had the training. They haven't done this. Asking them to evolve their assessment methodology is really hard because we're still trying to get them to use the basic tools, right? Meanwhile, the students across the globe are far more tech savvy. Like the number of students that have smartphones, even in developing country, is remarkable, because that's their window to the world, right? But that's also driving this need for learning, and this desire for more education, which is fascinating when you go to Latin America and the Pacific Rim. Like there's such an excitement for education right now. That's why I get so passionate about this, right? But they're they're actually, one of the things that I find is, in some ways they're less likely to, because they understand the value of the education itself. And I think they haven't glossed over that why. I actually think they're far less likely to turn to ChatGPT as a cheating tool. They don't want to cheat because they want the value of what they're learning. And I think that's something that is a little bit more, we're dealing with more in North America and Europe than we are in a lot of the developing nations. So I think that's
Really
that.
interesting.
Yeah, and it's my perception. I don't have data to back that up necessarily, but I do see it, and I do think that that idea that taking the shortcut is almost more of a Western thing, right? And so if we can get back to the fundamentals, like a lot of especially in Latin America, I mean, I just think this energy around learning is really positive. They're less concerned about some of the academic integrity stuff and more about the cost, both financial cost of these tools, but the environmental cost of the energy consumed by these tools. I hear that a lot when I'm in Latin America. So for them, it's more how do we make sure that everybody maintains access to these systems? How do we bring the best tools in the world? But how do we make sure that we're not creating a access accessibility gap? How do we make sure that we're not doing more damage by using these tools? How do we make sure that they have the real AI, whether it's prompt engineering, database management, those skills for the emerging jobs, right? That's more of the concern there. And I think in America, we need to get to that same place that a lot of what we would call developing countries are in, because they're starting from a little different perspective. But fundamentally, on November 30th of 2022, we all started across the globe in the same space. It's just been interesting to see how different areas of the globe have progressed around that. And the faster we can get over the idea that these are cheating tools and the focus there, the better off we are with adapting these in really positive ways.
That's so interesting. Like a lot of that reminds me of a recent episode we did with Dr. Julia Hughes, where, her whole thing was like students cheat when they feel cheated,
Yep.
like when they don't buy into the value of the education that they're being given,
Yeah.
that they're like, oh, like, this is pointless. Like if my educator is not investing in me, like, why would I invest in this education?
Yeah.
So it's
And if you're
interesting to hear that there's more buy-in in like Latin America.
No, I love that. That's a really interesting perspective. I kind of love that because it's honestly the case. And if your educator is not really creating an engaging online experience, if they're not using a hybrid, if they're not using the technology, are they really investing in you? Like it's a little self-centered, it's a little selfish. I'm going to teach the way I'm going to teach, and I don't care how you want to receive it. And that's a really old school mindset. And I think we're evolving a lot. It's a spectrum, but I think one of the great kind of silver linings that came out of COVID was this focus on the student user experience, right? It used to be okay to have 3 different LMSs on a campus because educators didn't care that a student had to navigate between 3 different systems and it was hard. They didn't care. Post COVID, institutions as a whole, higher ed or I'm speaking largely higher ed right now, but they really shifted their focus to how do we look at the student experience and make sure as a student navigates through their day, whether they're taking fully online courses, on campus courses, or a hybrid mix. How do we make sure that their experience is as seamless as possible? How do we address mental health issues? How do we make sure they understand the tutoring resources and the mental health resources? And how do we make sure that they are actually having an experience that they value, right? When I went to college, they you had the weed out courses and they'd say, look to your left, look to your right. One of these students is going to be here at the end of the semester. And they did it with pride. They weeded you out. You'd already passed the bar to be there. What's the thinking behind, then making it so unpleasant that you want to leave? Like it's so like fundamental shift in how we address this. And so I do think the next step really is driving consistency across course experience, whether it's hybrid or fully online or in the classroom, but making sure as you go between classes and different departments and you're using these technologies, you're using them consistently because that stuff matters. These are barriers to student success that are easily overcome with the right amount of training and resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's kind of almost like kind of the burden to preserve academic integrity like
Yep.
really falls on educators to provide a great user experience because cheating is more of a symptom of a poor user experience than, something inherent to the way that students are.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
You're spot on. And then I think it's hard for a lot of educators to kind of internalize that. And it's just again, when you look at students, I have a big screen TV in my living room, but my kids will both be laying in their rooms watching the little screen. And at the same time, my son's got. I think Elvin, last time we talked, I was talking about how my son had an encyclopedic knowledge of NBA players and their stats, and I'm like, "How do you have this?" And he's like, "YouTube." But he's micro on YouTube. Like he's learning differently. And so we've got to acknowledge that students are fundamentally more tech savvy. They want to learn differently. They like different screen size. The fundamentals of liking to watch a show on a different screen size, I think is fascinating. And so as educators, we've got to be more curious about that and more aligned to that as opposed to digging our heels in and saying we're not going to.
Yeah, for sure. It's always been like kind of one of the big ironies to me about like the discussion on AI literacy that like among all this, the students are like more AI literate than their
Yeah.
teachers like most of the time.
Yeah, and it feels kind of disingenuous now to say that like, for an educator to say, I'm not going to use AI because, my job is to train better members of society or my job, it's a cheating tool. Like at this point, like you can't just kind of stick your fingers in your ears and say blah 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 and not engage in the conversation. You've got to do it. And we're almost 3 years now into this generative AI revolution, and those you're the losing side of the, it's like pretending the internet was going to go away, right? Like, or that somehow that wouldn't be fundamental to education at some point. Like, it's just, we're beyond that. They're all smarter people than that. They've just got to make the shift. And so, yeah, again, at the same time, colleges, universities, school districts, they need to provide those resources. Bradley, like you were saying, they've got to give educators time to adopt these. They've got to give them the resources to adopt these. They've got to show them what good looks like, open their eyes to those different use cases. But to me, modeling what good looks like is almost one of the hardest things in education. And it's one of the things, we're super collaborative, generally as a community. We share information, we do that kind of stuff, but we're not always good at like agreeing that that's actually a really good experience. Let's get on board and kind of follow someone's lead. We like to have dissenting opinions. Those are great, but as long as those dissenting opinions actually are productive towards adopting these tools, I think that makes more sense.
For sure. Okay, I've got maybe one more question for you, which is, so like, let's say that like, let's role play a little. Let's say that like I'm a dean or like some principal, and I'm coming to you, and I am like, oh my God, like AI is destroying my school. Like all of the kids are cheating. The teachers have no idea how to handle it. Nobody's learning anything. Like, where would you kind of begin to kind of counsel them in kind of like turning the ship around and creating a more like AI positive culture?
Oh yeah, I think fundamentally that's when you actually need to bring all of your stakeholders together, and I'm talking teachers and students and administrators, and give them all a say in defining your AI policy. What is your AI policy? Is it well defined? I would argue if you're in a situation like that it's probably not. But educators need a voice. Students need a voice. Everyone, it's not something that's done behind closed doors and pushed out there. And then the other aspect too is, like I said, we are this massively collaborative environment, community, right? In education, there are so many resources out there. I have a presentation that has, and actually there's an AI resource hub on the Canvas community that you can go find. And literally there's a K-12 course from the University of Michigan on how to use AI in your classroom, right? There's the same thing from Arizona State University for higher ed, right? These are free courses that educators go out and take to literally just start understanding how to engage them, how to use them. Basically make those requirements for educators, create an ethical policy for students, and really communicate it very broadly on here's how you use it appropriately. Those basic communication steps will have such an impact, because right now I will tell you, in the vast majority of K-12 institutions, they are not even having a conversation. They're just pretending it'll go away. They're pretending. And even I think some of the initial responses of blocking, things that universities did 2.5 years ago of just blocking all the AI tools, now we're actually seeing K-12 do that this year. And you're like, but that's already proven to be ineffective. Like, the students circumvent that easily. But the communication, making sure they feel like they're buying into the aspect, into the policies and the approaches, is incredibly important. And just making sure everybody feels heard, and then documenting it and sharing it. And this doesn't need to be punitive. We need to teach people the positive ways to do this. Not, it should be a lot of carrot, not a lot of stick.
Yeah, it's really weird to me. Like when I talk to some schools and there's just this like kind of like almost like dark thundercloud that like hovers over them. That's like there's just this stigma where like it's this like forbidden thing that nobody wants to talk about. It's really weird. I'm not sure where it comes from or like how it got there, but maybe it's just kind of like ingrained fear of the unknown. Like I'm not really sure.
I think there's some of that. I think it's built on itself over the last couple of years. And the problem I have is that there's almost a helplessness. And it's, again, I totally understand that it's easy to feel like the train has left the station. You missed the train, it's already gone. I will 100% tell you right now, that is not the case. There are so many resources out there to make yourselves really smart. And these aren't, I think educators think it's going to take them hours and hours and, weeks and weeks to really understand this deeply. It will not. Go out and take there's free writing or AI basics from Google, AI basics from Microsoft. And these are 45-minute classes on how to just write prompts, how to do the basics, how to think about use cases, right? This is not super hard. This is, instead of playing, two dots, or, my wife loves, like, I don't know, I've never played it. But, instead of playing that, go microlearn like your students do for 45 minutes, and you'll be surprised at how much you can learn very quickly. And to me, it's that positive, shifting our attitudes towards more positive. There is a way through this. This isn't the death of education. This isn't going to take your job, right? Get over all those things and start understanding. And there's some great educators out there who are so excited about using these tools and what they're capable of, and just use them to make images. Create a few images that you drop into your course. Go in and create a short video that you drop into your course. Make fun of AI and how it's sometimes wrong, right? Like, there's so much you can do to, like, just change that perception, and that's got to come from leadership. But it's also those advocates that you start in every school that really become the kind of center for that evolution.
Yeah, this has been Ryan.
I get excited about this stuff.
I love it. I love it.
It's such an exciting time to be in education.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, okay, let's look at the future. I think I know your answer. I'm going to ask anyway, because we're asking everyone the same question. What do you see as the future of academic integrity?
I actually think moving forward, we have a much more personalized, AI is powering a much more personalized experience in every course, where the way they engage with the educator is a lot more driven by the student's preferences. And because of that, they're more engaged. They're less likely to cheat. They're optimizing the educator's use of time, right, to really interact with them, because a lot of the mundane tasks are being taken by AI. But the educators are still at the heart. I do not see a world where the an educator, a professor, or K-12 teacher is not the heart. That connection between teacher and student is the spark of education. AI is just there to power it. But by creating a more engaging experience and a more personalized experience, you can actually track whether a student is actually learning the skill and mastering the skill in real time, and they're less likely to take the shortcut and kind of fall between the cracks. And so I think embracing AI, instead of focusing on how do we make better tests, let's make better learning that we're tracking better, and that will lead to less issues with academic integrity.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Ryan, thank you as always for being here. Let me outro my co-host, who, as you know by now, is the most Ryan, by the way. He is Bradley Emmy, CTO and co-founder at Pangram Labs. Bradley, thank you as always.
Thanks for having me on the show, Alvin. Always a good time.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to outro our guest today. No, ladies and gentlemen, he's your guest today. He is on fire, Ryan Lufkin. He is Vice President of Global Academic Strategy at Instructure, the makers of Canvas. Ryan, thank you so much for coming back. We really appreciate your time.
This has been awesome, Melvin. Thank you. Bradley, thank you so much. This is always fun having this conversation.
Absolutely. You got it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just eduped.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.